Hello and welcome to the Executive Hub Show, the podcast that helps you grow your business with simple tips and strategies from successful entrepreneurs. This episode is brought to you by Persyo. If you're struggling to grow your business, Persyo offers online marketing courses that make learning easy and simple. Whether you're a beginner or a pro, their training helps you master strategies to attract more customers and boost sales. You can check out their courses at persyo.com. Persyo is Persyo.com and start winning today. My guest today is Josh Roberts. Welcome, Josh.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Great to see you. Let me do the proper introduction for Josh, and we're going to talk about the secrets of running a fun business and how to find your perfect business partner, which is important in running your business. I think having the right business partner could make or break your business, pretty much, and it's very important. So let me do the proper introduction, and we're going to get into it. Josh Roberts lives in Memphis, Tennessee, with his wife Jessica and with their two kids, Judah and Willow. He started his career in advertising in Los Angeles before returning to Memphis and working in consulting, where he met his business partner, Evan. As a co founder of Very Special Games, Josh focuses mostly on game design, creative development, and operations. Josh, great to have you on the show.
Yeah, thanks again for having me.
Absolutely. So let's get into it. What is your story?
So, starting August 16th, 1979, just kidding. My wife and I got married on my 23rd birthday, excuse me. I graduated college the next day, and 2 days after that, we moved to Los Angeles, where I was lucky to start my career in advertising at one of the world's largest firms, at least according to holding company size. We were there for several years. Really enjoyed LA, all the trappings of beautiful weather every day, going to the beach, being able to get to the mountains pretty quickly. But Memphis, people here tend to joke that Memphis has a tractor beam of sorts that once people have moved away for too long, the city kind of brings them back. And when we started talking about building a family and having kids, we really just started to get homesick and wanted to come back home to Memphis. So I continued on in advertising for a little bit and woke up one day and looked around and recognized that, there's not a lot of people with gray hair at an ad agency. And if I'm thinking about my long-term career, maybe advertising isn't a great fit. And if you're not familiar, advertising is also on billable hours, which filling out timesheets is for the birds. So I decided I had enough and took a little bit of a hiatus and got into consulting. And I met my business partner, Evan, as we both worked at a small growth strategy and innovation consulting firm in Memphis. Um, so we worked together for a year or two and had good chemistry. Worked on some projects together for mostly mid-market companies. So imagine a founder or a child of founder-led companies. 50 million to 200 million market cap was most of our client roster. But then one day, Evan and I got into a conversation that he had had the night before, where some of his friends and he were debating if there was a direct correlation between your age and the amount of money you're willing to spend on a steak dinner. So you imagine in your 20s, you're in college, maybe your steak dinner budget is not very big, but then you get into your 60s and at the end of your career, and maybe spending a little more on the steak dinner is more palatable for you. And amusing conversation, sure. But I got really interested when Evan said, "Do you think we can turn that into a board game?" And I've been playing board games my whole life in various fits and starts with my family and friends. And I thought that was really interesting. So by lunch that day, we had drawn up on sticky notes and we're playing a prototype version of our first game, Charty Party, in the conference room with our interns and a couple coworkers. And while that early iteration of Charty Party was, clunky and complicated and a little too hard to play, um, it was fun. And the people in the room that day had a good time, and we knew we had something on our hands. So one thing led to another. We kind of took the next step with product development, which for us meant getting a prototype put together and putting it on Kickstarter. Our Kickstarter outperformed our expectations, and then we had a business in our hands, and have kind of backed into running a games business and learned a lot along the way.
Love it. Absolutely love that story.
Thank you.
An idea, turn it into a game, put it on Kickstarter, you got market validation, you got your startup funds, and then boom, here we
Yeah,
go.
and if you're interested, we so that lunch meeting when we played the first prototype of Charty Party was in November. We were on Kickstarter with that product by February. So quick development cycle for that one, but that's not to say we didn't take our time developing it. Evan and I put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into Charty Party, and almost 6 years later, it still does pretty good business for us every year. And we are regularly getting feedback from people who tell us to this day they love it.
Amazing. And then, so what inspired you to turn that into a business?
I mean, frankly, we kept having good ideas. So Charty Party, after the Kickstarter, we recognized that we could order more inventory with the Kickstarter funding than we needed just to fulfill the orders that the Kickstarter backers had placed. So we ordered more inventory and we put it up on Amazon. And during the Kickstarter campaign, had learned how to use Facebook ads and some other things. Um, and we started doing sales every single day based on some online advertising and our Amazon presence. At that time, we had a Squarespace website specifically for just Charty Party. We're now on Shopify and have all of our game products on that website for veryspecialgames.com. Um, and we started kind of building the infrastructure and processes you need to run a games business. But importantly, coupled that with we had a pretty good idea at least once a year since then. So we've been able to launch 8 products now and are looking to do 4 more this year.
Amazing. Yeah, I was going to ask you, do you guys only sell direct to consumers, or do you sell them through other vendors and couriers as well?
Yeah, both. So we're founded on a direct-to-consumer e-commerce strategy, and that's the thing. If people reach out to us and ask about how to run a business and what I can teach them, that's really what I lean into because that's where we grew up and that's what we are good at. But we also have a distributor who's been super effective for us. We've got a couple products in Target. We've got stuff in Barnes and Noble. We're going into Walmart early this year, so we're diversifying into wholesale and retail. We have a small wholesale business for hobby and game stores that we run ourselves through a platform called Fair, where people can order cases of our games off our website to put in their stores or board game bar or whatever they may have. Um, so yeah, we started with a small product and kind of just straight direct to consumer with an unsophisticated e-com strategy, and now we're like a omni-channel marketing machine.
Love it. So, Josh, who is your target market and what do you do for them?
That is an interesting question for us, and I used to answer that and say my our target audience is me and Evan, and sometimes my wife Jessica. And our game development process was if Evan and I have an idea that we think is cool and it's a game that we want to play, we'll start developing it and kind of cross our fingers that other people will agree and buy it. And I include my wife Jessica in that is because she was my number one playtester as we were building new game products. Today, having been in business for 6 years now, we recognize who game buyers are, and the most prolific game buyers tend to be women 30 to 50. Sometimes just for the family, a lot of times for gift giving. Games are a very giftable product. We do 70 to 80% of our business in November and December around the holidays. So I don't tell you that to say that we make our games for women who are 30 to 40 years old, but we try to focus on what we think is going to be important to that buyer. So um, something that's accessible. We don't want to make something that looks too hard to learn or too complicated to bring out and play with your family over for a few minutes, and kind of something that's themed in the same vein. That person's not going to be nervous to give as a gift or to bring out at a dinner party. and just kind of check the boxes of what we think their need state is. I've recognized in myself, I rarely bring my best friend of more than 30 years over to the house to test new game products because he's busy. He's got two kids, he's got an important job. And I'm not going to ask him to spend his free time on something that's half baked and that's not fun yet. And we try to take that idea of um, putting something in front of somebody that's going to bring them joy, and it's going to be the opposite of a waste of their time. It's going to amplify their quality time that they have with their loved ones. And there's a lot of pressure when you're hosting a get together of the people you love. And if you're going to bring a game to the table, you want to be able to trust that that game's going to be well received by the people you have visiting, and so those are the kind of games we try to develop.
I love it. A few important things you mentioned there was we think about what's important for the buyer, and we don't want them to be nervous when they're taking them around,
Mm-hmm.
and they want to make sure that the gift is well received. Those are amazing, I guess, questions and thought processes when designing a product.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I think those are well worth writing down and making notes and taking action on it. As if you're designing a product, whether it's a physical product and or even digital product, I think we could answer all those questions for our design process.
Sure,
Amazing.
and coincidentally, the growth strategy and innovation firm where Evan and I worked, where we met, leaned on at the time a design methodology called design thinking, and not to bore you with too many of the details of design thinking, but the first part of that process is called empathy, and that's really understanding who your user is and the problems they have that you are trying to and have the ability to solve. So we think about that a lot, that empathy, when we're doing game development. And one of the contradictions in our business is when my wife and I play games at the house, we tend to play kind of long form, complicated, deep cut strategy sort of things. And that's not the games we make. Number one, because there's people out there who do that on a daily basis better than I ever could. So we're not going to try to make those kind of games. Plus, it's those sorts of games aren't as appealing to our target audience as maybe the things we make. So we try to make stuff that we know we're going to be good at making, that are going to solve the problems that the people have who we're able to communicate with, um, and we can reach them where they're at.
Love it. It's amazing. Amazing. I think if more people thought about their product design that way, we have way better products and less failing products and businesses out there. If
Yeah,
you,
you sound like a spokesperson for design thinking right now. Like that's their whole pitch is understand who your users are and what they want, and you're going to have more go to market success and less product failures.
yeah, I kind of have some experience with that myself because I've designed a few products, and literally before this interview, we were working on our AI tool, and we were constantly thinking about how people are going to use it. And I'm like, if I have a problem with this, probably other people will have a problem, so we need to fix this, things like that. So that's what I found
Yeah,
really interesting. The stuff you mentioned.
yeah. So one of the things that we do that's kind of nerve wracking is a lot of play testing, and when we think a game is pretty close to launch, we'll do a round of play testing where we'll put the product in front of a group of people and leave. That doesn't always mean leave all the way, like a lot of times we'll observe, but leave in the sense that I'm not going to explain to you how it works. You're going to read the
Yes,
instructions. You're going to see, and so I get to sit back and watch how people interact with the product, if they're able to learn it quickly and teach it to their friends quickly, and all the things that we're trying to do with our games. And there's no better teacher than watching your target users try to use your product and observing whether or not they get it right and they're using it the way they intended. And most importantly for us, are they having a good time? Because at the end of the day, Evan and I are packaging up and trying to deliver fun. And if they're not having fun, we failed.
that's a great approach, and I've done that before. Where I've done it mostly with software
Mhm.
where I would invite someone, say, on a Zoom call, and then give them some instructions on go ahead and use the software, and please speak out your thoughts out loud so I could hear what you're going through. and we've got our some of our best development feedback just from that.
Yeah,
It's
that's
amazing.
cool. That reminds me of I don't think I can talk about the client company unfortunately, but a project Evan and I did at the consulting firm. We worked with a university partner in town in Memphis where I live, and we got people to come into a research lab, and we put electrodes on their head and had them navigate a website and complete some specific tasks, and we were able to like measure and look at their brain activity while they were doing that. And I'm not sure that we learned a ton, but it was very cool
Oh yeah, especially if they speak out loud what they think about.
for sure.
We usually learn a ton, and they would say things like, "I don't know what I should do now,"
Yeah,
or what am I supposed to when they get stuck we know our design is flawed, like the next button is not clear or the color is not outstanding, and things like that, that what's a lot of times with simple changes the design could improve significantly.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
How disruptive has AI been for you? I'm kind of curious about that because it's starting to show up in our industry a little bit as well.
God, I use AI all day long with
Yeah,
so I'm in marketing, so I use it all day long. Pretty
yeah,
I use it as my coach, as I use it for idea generation, I use it for it's I use it to come up with questions to ask my kids because I run out of things to talk about, to come up with some new questions. That's just like I think that's the most unique thing I've done. Like give me some questions to ask my 8-year-old boy, and it just boom gives me some questions, and I go through and ask him some of them, and it gives me some meaningful conversation. But
man, I
we use it
love
for
that.
work, and
That's
we're
so
developing.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It,
we have a company policy where we're not going to put anything in the box that is generated by AI. We're always going to hire humans and have people get their hands on the work that we produce. Because at the end of the day, we're not selling our games to robots. We need people to buy it. So it's nice to have that human touch. But we do use AI on a regular basis. I think where it shows up for us a lot is in like art direction. So instead of writing a creative brief for a graphic designer, we'll sort of use Midjourney or another uh, image generating tool to
yeah.
kind of share our vision that way. The other thing that I've been using it for a lot lately is, I mean, you said it already, but as a creative partner. So if I have a game idea, I might write a paragraph with some bullet points in there and say, what would a game that does these things look like? Or maybe
Yep.
write a rule set for a game like this. Because it does help stimulate my thinking about a game product before I put something in front of Evan and we decide to develop it in earnest. I can kind of explore something very quickly and get a feel for whether or not I think there's actually something there.
100%. I do the same thing. Like I have an idea about a software or a business idea. I'm like, what would this look like? Give me the layout, give me the process, give me the steps. It gives me the steps, and I grab it, edit, modify. Sometimes it gives me some really good ideas. Sometimes it's not good. It just, but it's been
Yeah,
more helpful than in a positive way than negative for me.
yeah, I think that's true. I mean, you got to be careful not to put, all your eggs in the AI basket because even the best tools, like sometimes Midjourney is going to spit something out where somebody's got three arms on one side of their body and their hands are feet
Yes,
instead, and that's not the art you want to put on the front of your game box. But I think just recognizing it's a tool that has limitations, but also has tremendous value in the creative
for sure.
process, I think is how we're trying to use it.
Yeah, to me, AI is an assistant.
Yep.
It's not perfect. I use it when I can, and like I said, we don't put AI we always get AI to give us ideas or help us, and then there's always a human touch before it gets out in any shape or form.
Yeah, and I think that human touch is important. And I think, AI for me tends to kind of echo back or articulate what I'm already thinking. And that's where Evan becomes super valuable to me. But, obviously he provides tremendous amount of value to the business, where I think, he's much younger than me. He's 30, I'm 45. So there's just kind of a generational thing going on that works well for us. But a lot of times in running the business, he cares about things that I don't care about, and vice versa. So it helps with division of labor. But then also we just have a different sense of humor, a different take on what we think is interesting and cool. So there's a really nice creative tension both in how we run the business, but also how we do game design. And if I was to extract Evan from the process, in addition to being a lot less fun and a lot less personable, I think I would get a lot of a digital representation of what I'm already thinking back, and we'd lose that creative tension, which is often where our games become the best versions of themselves.
Oh yeah, absolutely amazing. It's been helpful, and I think AI is still in the early stages, and it's got to
For
do a
sure.
lot more in what we do. So, Josh, what is the uh, problem that you guys solve, and how do you solve it for your customers?
That is a big question. So first, board games had something of a renaissance during the global pandemic. People are stuck at home and grasping at straws, looking for literally anything to do with the people they're trapped with. So on some level, high level, the biggest problem we're trying to solve is enabling high quality, enjoyable human connections. So we, in our game design guide, we have heuristics about, making sure everybody at the table is engaged at all times. Don't give people a reason to pull their phone out of their pocket. Like, there's plenty to do in the internet space and on your phone and on your computer. But we really live in that part of somebody's life where, like, I'm bringing together a group of people I want to spend quality time with, and we want to create a product that helps you make those moments the best they can be.
Love it. Beautiful. Enabling high quality human connections, and don't
Yep.
give people a reason to pull their phone out. Those are
Yeah, that's right. And
amazing.
what's interesting about games, at least in certain social settings, so we've got a super cool board game bar in Memphis called Board to Beers. If you're ever in town, you should go there. But one of the things you'll notice if you go and sit there for a while is you'll see groups of people and there's a game on the table, and sometimes the game never gets opened. And it's kind of just like a social lubricant in the sense that, you know, the game is what brought us all together. If the conversation gets boring or otherwise uninteresting, we've got this thing that we can open up and we can play and kind of rekindle what we're here to do. Um, but it's kind of a low pressure social empowerment tool, I think. And I know that's kind of a overwhelming and big way to talk about a board game, but I really, when we're designing something, we treat it with that level of seriousness and care, because we are asking you to spend, upwards of an hour of your and your friend's time with our product. So we try to deliver something that's worthy of that time you're giving to it.
Absolutely. So, Josh, Zara is watching on Instagram, and she's saying, "Well, what games? Can you give us like the names of your top five popular games?"
Yeah, well, there's two that, if you're at all familiar with games, that you're maybe likely to have heard of. So our top performer is a game called Ransom Notes. Ransom Notes is in Target, Walmart, and Barnes and Noble, among others, but those are the big ones. Ransom Notes works where there's a bunch of prompt cards in the box, and then the players have a word cloud made of word magnets. So the prompt card comes out, and everybody responds to that prompt card as best they can with their word magnets. My favorite prompt card is write a eulogy for your boss who you openly despise. But the prompt cards kind of run the whole gamut. Evan's got kind of a fraternity boy, juvenile sense of humor. I have a very, existential dread, getting older sort of sense of humor. So there's a nice mix of that kind of humor in Ransom Notes. We created an algorithm for determining what the words should be on the word magnets included in the game, and that's important because even though you know you get a random smattering of words, the algorithm we created to determine the vocabulary of the game almost 100% of the time ensures that you're going to be able to respond in some meaningful way. You might be at the table playing Ransom Notes and say, "Man, I really wish I had this word," and you just don't. So that's kind of a bummer. But That's our flagship workhorse. It was the number one game on Amazon in holiday 2023, and I think got up to number three in 2024. So that one's Ransom Notes. The other one that we have that's big is called Abduction, but it's spelled DUCK, like duck, quack quack. And Abduction is a light strategy game where the players basically arrange the ducks on their board into different formations and they capture point cards depending on how complicated that formation is. And that one is a really heavily themed game for us. So it's called Abduction because the ducks, when they're not in use, live in this silicone spaceship. And there's this theme around it where the players are interns at a intergalactic corporation that for some reason is doing research on ducks on Earth. But it's really fun. And then we've got, I'll try to blow through the rest of them quickly. Tiny Laser Heist is kind of an escape room in a box where players cooperate and compete to steal jewels out of a museum. Puns of Anarchy is a game where players change pop culture ephemera, so like books, movies, TV shows. They use dry erase markers to make jokes in certain categories. So the categories might be as mundane as like food or animals, and up to science experiments. That jar's loose. One of my one of my favorite examples. Was a player was playing into the category science experiments, and they had the card Death Cab for Cutie, and they changed it to say Death Lab for Curie, referring to Marie Curie, which I loved. Charty Party I mentioned earlier. We've got something coming out called Bloom Chasers. We've got a product called Vens with Benefits, which is it's a Venn diagram party game. So the players connect these two disparate things and make jokes around there. Trying to remember a good example of that that's clean enough for for this show. Um, Hot air balloons and my ex-boyfriend, and the player connected it, full of hot air, which was fun. But yeah, so we just try to make a light strategy game. Hopefully, you can learn how to play it in less than a minute or two, and have a good time. 45 minutes and an hour with your friends and family.
Love it. So Zara says she has heard of that one. I don't know which one she said here. I think it was maybe the abduction one, or maybe the other one. Gang, if you're watching or listening, you could go to veryspecialgames.com, and you guys have like a .ca site for Canada.
We do.
I just noticed.
Yeah, so we've expanded into Canada. We're working on expanding into Europe. I'm not sure that we're doing a tremendous job on that, but trying to own our international expansion ourselves. So it's a lot of work on the front end, but obviously for the purposes of revenue and margin, rather than having licensing partners or distributors, if we own that business ourselves, it's better for the health of the business. So we're trying to do
Oh
that
yeah,
slowly but surely.
love it. Um, Josh, do you guys ever try to maybe stay in touch with your end users and clients that use your boards?
Yeah, for sure. So we do that informally and formally. So that informally, we send out some follow-up emails after somebody's made a purchase. Most of them come from me and are just like, hey, thanks for buying the game. Here's a couple tips for how to play it. Hope you all have fun, sort of things. And that email gets a lot of response back from people who just kind of organically share their experience with us, who they played with, what they thought of it, all of that good stuff. And I try to respond to all of those. If people reach out to us with feedback, I try to have a dialogue with them. And then we do some formal surveys on a somewhat regular basis. And we also get formal feedback. I mentioned the board game bar at Memphis Board to Beers. As a game designer, you're never going to get feedback that's better than what people who spend time at a board game bar can give you. So I try to put our stuff in front of the regulars at Board to Beers as often as I can to get feedback there as well.
Fantastic. Give us an example of an end user that your client that owns maybe one of your boards. How did you find them, and then what their feedback was with your product?
Um, My favorite story here, and I wish Evan was here because this is an interaction he had, but I know enough of it that it'll be fun, I think. He got an email recently from a woman who said, I am 77 years old and I bought ransom notes um, to break up the monotony at my knitting group. Um, so apparently she has a knitting group with five other women, roughly her age, and they were getting tired of just knitting, so they bought a copy of ransom notes. And Evan writes back to her and says, "Great, let us know how it goes." And about 3 weeks later, she sends us back this email with a bunch of pictures in it and just these riotously funny and downright foul things that her and her friends created with the game, and just like expressed a ton of gratitude for how much fun they had with the product. And we that one's a little bit of an outlier. We get that sort of feedback on a regular basis. Usually, it's like I said, 35 to 45-year-old women. Um, a lot of times the feedback we get is I haven't I haven't had this much fun with my adult children in a long time, and that one kind of warms my heart quite a bit. Just knowing that we're helping families make connections or reconnect with each other. I think that's kind of our highest and best use as a company. But it's usually in that same vein, like and for us, it's rewarding to know how we look at our mission of empowering quality time, or enabling quality time with people you love and care about. When we get feedback that says we did that, we hit the mark, that's as rewarding as this business gets for me.
Love it. That's a great story. People, 77-year-old woman was using it with her friends.
Yep, 77.
Wow.
Yep,
You never know who uses your product
you
and what their
never know.
story is.
No,
But
and we advertise a lot on Facebook, and um, we do have a bell curve chart of who our ads get served up to and who our buyers are, and it's that group that I've talked about a bunch of times. But the long tail in the 50 to 80 plus group is not nothing. So we do have buyers that are not necessarily who you'd expect sometimes.
absolutely. So, Josh, what makes your products and your company different to the competitors and other game producing companies out there?
Great question, and this is my opinion, obviously biased, so take it for what it's worth. I think there's an ecosystem in our business of game inventors who are some of the most creative and hardworking people maybe in the world. They're just idea factories for games, and a lot of times the way a game gets made is these creators pitch it to a company, sometimes like ours. We don't ever take them, um, but most board game companies take an idea, kind of develop it, get the art done and all that, and then put it out in the world, see if it can work. Uh, every game we have, Evan and I made it. So for better or worse, it's something that we've put our blood, sweat, and tears into, which means we care about it a lot, which is not always the case in the board game business. Like a lot of times, if you're taking somebody else's idea, I think in any industry, but particularly the board game business, by definition, you can't care about that idea as much as you can your own thing that you made, with your creativity, with your blood, sweat, and tears. So I think that's a big difference. Is Evan and I are fully involved in the design and development process from beginning to end. I think the other thing is we just have this idea. There's this game called Gloomhaven. If you're not familiar, Gloomhaven is a real deep cut strategy game, really, really well done. Was the number one ranked game on Board Game Geek, which is kind of the online hub for board game enthusiasts. I think it was number one on Board Game Geek for like 8 years. Don't quote me on that. I might be wrong about the time, but it was some astronomical length of time where this is the top rated game in the world. And the amount of energy they put into the details, and just you can tell just looking at the box, and especially when you open the box and when you play the game, you can tell how much time and energy and attention to detail they put into Gloomhaven. And Evan and I have this belief that like Ransom Notes is not Gloomhaven, but we can put the same level of care into developing Ransom Notes that they put into developing Gloomhaven. So different experience, different level of accessibility, but we, for Ransom Notes in particular, we had a design heuristic that was like, people are going to play this game at a party, and if somebody comes and they sit down and they play one card and get up and walk away from the table, that one card they play should be enjoyable and memorable. So I think we wrote something like 3,000 cards for the first version of Ransom Notes, and it has 250 in it.
Oh
And,
wow.
and we just nurtured and cultivated and made each of those 250 cards the best we could possibly make them, uh, with the hope that if you just saw one, it was a good time for you.
Yeah, the one you mentioned, writing a eulogy for a boss that you hate. That's a good one.
It's relatable, right?
Oh my goodness. That could go viral very quick on social media.
Yeah, I mean that's part of our success has been the shareability of ransom notes. I think unlike some other party games, our games, all of them except for Charty Party, and we didn't know what we were doing when we made Charty Party. So it's this way: if we made Charty Party again, we would make it differently. Love it, but we've got a different philosophy now. We want our games to give the players enough creative control to where it's their jokes, it's their inside jokes, they're roasting their friends. It's not stuff that Evan and I wrote that they're just matching our jokes with some other stimulus. So our games try to give the players enough to work with, enough momentum that they can be hilarious, but decidedly it's them making the joke, not me or Evan.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Josh, what are some of the milestones that you guys have achieved along the way since you started Very Special Games?
Yeah, I mean, depending on how you define milestones, there's a few that really resonate with me. So we've been on the Inc. 5000 the last 2 years. So that's a list of the 5,000 fastest growing companies in the United States. So that's kind of a big honor from a business perspective. Um, then I think, you know, the next level down from that, getting into Target is a huge deal for any game maker. So that's a big one. Getting into Walmart's a huge deal. Abduction won a Mensa award, which is crazy to me. But getting that kind of recognition from the Society of Smart People is kind of a big deal. But I think the biggest one for me is we now have 6 people on staff. So like we've created some jobs and we've been in business for 6 years, and most small businesses don't get near that amount of time and to staff up to near that size. So we're still small, but I think we're mighty, and I think we've hit some notes along the way that I'm really proud of.
Beautiful, beautiful. That's massive achievements in 6 years. Most people
Thank
don't
you,
do that in 60 years. So
thank you.
that's amazing. What are some of the challenges that you have faced along the way while achieving those milestones?
Yeah, the big one in 2020, it was really hard to come by shipping containers. So we do all our manufacturing in China, and there was a point where that whole process just kind of broke. I mean, everybody watching this remembers it was sometimes hard to get toilet paper. It was impossible to get a can of soda. So, like, imagine when we're incredibly low on the food chain as far as necessities go, how hard it is for us to get a container. So that's the big one. Was just getting inventory into the country to be able to sell it in 2020. But I think that's also illustrative of our longest term ongoing challenge is just balancing inventory management, because it's our biggest risk from a capital expenditure standpoint, is paying for that inventory in advance, not knowing if we're going to be able to sell it all. But it's our biggest risk in the sense that if we don't order enough, we don't generate the revenue we need to keep going, and the profit we need to keep this as a lucrative business. So just being able to forecast and order and manage cash flow so we always have inventory to sell when we need to sell it is the ongoing thing that I think keeps us all awake at night.
Amazing. There's always those unknown challenges you never know when they're going to hit, right?
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like,
So-
well, just something I think about on a fairly regular basis is ransom notes is full of magnets, and magnets are technically a rare earth mineral that gets mined, and like that supply can get disrupted, it can dry up, and like, what do we do with our top performing product if magnets are no longer readily available? I don't know, but
yeah,
like,
maybe
I hope we never have to figure it out.
your games are going to be rare, and the price on them is going to go up. I Look, I'm not a huge gamer. I didn't know that's a thing, that there are like games that are rare and there's like massive money people pay to get their hands on it.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I think Gloomhaven, that I mentioned a second ago, is like $200.
Yeah,
Um,
it's not cheap. I just looked, some of them are 300 bucks online.
yep, yep.
Is this
Not
like
ours.
limited?
Ransom is $35, so not
Yeah.
quite
So,
that,
so
that expensive.
when I think about games, my mind goes into that 20, 30 to 50 bucks kind of range. And I have some friends who are gamers. They're like, no, dude, there's some games that are rare and people pay thousands of dollars for them.
Yeah, for
I
sure.
I, I had no idea,
Yeah, but if you
out of
think
my
about it,
ignorance.
so video games are like this a little bit too. I don't play a lot of video games anymore. I used to, and I will tell you, Halo 2 is the best $50 I've ever spent in my entire life because I probably put 3,000 hours into that game. And if you take all of your entertainment and just divide the price you paid by the amount of time you spent with it, it's hard to match video games. It's hard to match board games. If you play ransom notes, let's say for 3 hours with a group of six people, so that's 18 hours. $2 an hour per person. Like that's way less expensive than a movie. And then if you do that two or three times over the course of several different nights and with several different people, like, you're down to 25 cents an hour before you know it. And it's just if and this is why Evan and I spend so much time designing our games, because most games get designed um, to be played once, and that first play is important. But we want our games to deliver value over time. So we want you to play ransom notes, and the next time you have a different group of people over, or the same group of people, be like, you know what, let's get this box back out. Because that when you deliver that kind of value, that's when people are going to share it on their socials. To your earlier point, and that's when they're going to tell their friends about it and give you good reviews on Amazon and that sort of thing. And that's really what we're striving to do.
Amazing. Um, Josh, sometimes people think once you reach a certain point in business, like Inc. 5,000 or Fortune, reach a certain level of revenue, then problems disappear. Are there any maybe challenges that are holding you and your business back right now?
Uh, I don't know holding us back, but that's not to say we don't have our set of problems. Like Biggie said, more money, more problems, right? I think once you have a product in the games business that gets big enough, it's easy to make copycats. There's plenty of copycats out there. Ransom notes. There's counterfeits. There's all of those sorts of things. You know, we we have to be great on TikTok, so we drive sales to Target. Like you can imagine, the value that having a product on Target store shelves drives, and there's something like 6,000 games a year get published. So like maintaining our spot on that shelf is a super high priority, and we have not a ton of control over it other than like what can we do to drive awareness and drive people into the store to buy it. So we've been very lucky that we hired a social media director who's just incredible. So like we're able, when she has something go viral on TikTok, we can match it up to our target sales, and you can almost do a 1-to-1 spike. And you got 1 million TikTok views today, that means you sold X number of copies in Target that day. Um,
Nice.
but yeah, I mean the inventory management, the marketing in a super competitive area in increasingly short attention spans. We've got a lot of our own sets of problems. Nice problems in most cases, but they're still problems.
Love it. It always amazes me how sometimes I think even myself that this guy's probably doing okay. There's everything is good. but then there's always a list of problems that we don't know what people are going through.
Yeah,
Um,
for sure. Well, listen, I don't have a boss, and I get to make my own hours. I get to spend all the time in the world I want with my children. So it could definitely be worse. I've been very fortunate and very lucky, and I'm super grateful for what we've been able to achieve. But um, it's not easy, and I think anybody who runs their own business will tell you it's not easy, and there's never an easy day. But I think it's that challenge, especially once the money's taken care of. It's that challenge that keeps you coming back every day.
oh yeah. So Josh is all right saying, "What do you do now that TikTok is banned?"
Well, TikTok's back.
Oh,
So
it is.
yeah, like it was banned for like 12 hours or something. It doesn't work the same anymore. The algorithm's different. So we actually just are having our first viral moment post ban today, which our social media director is a little disappointed because she likes to have viral moments more often than that. But I think, you know, I've been around the internet since it started, and one thing I know is if TikTok disappears, something's going to replace it. So when TikTok was looked like it was going to go away for good, we were leaning into Instagram and Facebook and Pinterest and some of the other social sites and thinking about some of the more nascent ones, Blue Sky. There's a couple that our social media director mentioned that I've never heard of and I don't remember the names of that she was trying stuff on. So that'll be it. You know, if TikTok goes away forever, um, that'll
Sure,
be
that
a
works.
bummer. We'll have to pivot and we'll figure it out.
Awesome. Awesome. Josh, we mentioned so in the beginning of the show talking about. I know we're running out of time too, so we talked about working and finding a good business partner. Give us the 1 minute rundown on how that works. How do you go about it, and what people should look for?
So what people should look for, I think, is a complementary skill set. If you're going to run a business with somebody, it's much better if they are interested and good at the things you are not, and vice versa. You want to be able to bring an equal amount of horsepower to the table, so to speak. I think depending on the industry you're in, you want to have complementary skills there. So I mentioned earlier my sense of humor versus his sense of humor, and that tends to make a game that's pretty robust and explores a lot of subject matter instead of if it's just me telling jokes about existential dread over and over again. So somebody who complements your creative skill set as well. And then I think importantly, and I think this unfortunately gets lost on a lot of people, but you have to go into business with somebody you like to be around. And I know not everybody believes that, but I've joked that my relationship with Evan is more legally binding than my relationship with my wife. And that's true. Like, my wife can leave me tomorrow for whatever reason she decides. Like, if Evan decides to kick me out of the company, we have to go to court. There's arbitrators get involved. Like, he can't just leave and not be in a relationship with me anymore. So, like, when you have that level of stickiness and dependence in the business, you better be doing it with somebody that you like being around.
Love it. Love it. I mean, finding the right business partner is difficult, but when it's done right, it helps tremendously.
For
It
sure.
helps
No,
tremendously.
I'm grateful every day that I found Evan and that we stumbled into this thing together because, you know, you glimpse at our business and you could do it as a single founder. And I've looked at it before, and Evan's looked at it before, and we've joked with each other like we could do this ourselves potentially. But I'm so glad we're not because whatever version of it that I would have done myself would not be as high quality and reliable a business and as sustainable a business as it is. So I'm grateful every day that I found Evan and I get to work with him.
Yeah, I'm always. I've been lucky to find a business partner to work with, but honestly, I pray to God to find a good business partner
Yeah.
that I could do some good damage with. Um, Josh, what's one advice that made a big impact in your life or business?
I'll try to tell this story quick. So before I worked in the board game business, an offshoot of what I was doing, consultant work. I ran a nonprofit organization that helped people start charitable clinics anywhere in the country, and we had a single philanthropist who funded that endeavor. Um, just the best guy I've ever met. He had a reputation for being a little rough around the edges and a little demanding, but I just thought he was the greatest and incredibly generous. Anyway, one day he and I were talking about the financials of the nonprofit. And he said to me, and it was meant as much of an insult as it's going to sound like coming out of my mouth, that if somebody can't explain something clearly, it's clear to him they don't understand it.
Yeah.
And I think I took that to heart and decided from then on, if I'm ever going to be in a position where I have to talk about something, whether it's my game design process, the financials of our business, whatever it is, I am going to understand it enough that I can communicate it clearly. I hope I've done that today here. But that was a piece of advice. Make sure you understand what you're talking about so you can communicate clearly. That I think is really important, no matter what you're doing.
Amazing, amazing. As a huge fan of keeping things simple and clear. I mean, our entire brand is about simplicity, making things simple. I think, yeah, if you can't say it clearly or if you can't explain it so everyone, I say another version of that. I say is like if you explain it and a 5-year-old doesn't understand it, you don't know what you're talking about.
For sure, for sure. Yeah,
So I love it.
that's a good way to look at it.
Josh, I really wish we would have probably booked out like 2 hours for this conversation because it went a lot more interesting than I thought, and I would have
Good.
loved to geek out on product design, on marketing, and more of what you do. And we had people asking questions, so this was a fun episode, and I truly enjoyed it.
Well, thanks for having me. Glad to do it again sometime if you want. But really
Yeah, I would
appreciate
love
you
to
having
do
me.
a follow-up episode and geek out on a bunch of stuff that we talked about because uh, actually the friend that's asking the question, Zara, is a friend, and she drags me into games from time to time, and she's actually part of the reason we play some of the games. So,
Cool.
and I love product design and thinking about what customers think and getting in their shoes and getting feedback. I really enjoy that process.
Yeah,
Um,
for sure. Well, I'd be happy to talk about it with you.
100%. Um, tell us about where can our people that are watching or listening reach out to you and learn about your products and what you guys have out there.
Sure. So our website's veryspecialgames.com. We have a discount code you should feel free to use. It's Very Special Friends. It's all one word. I don't remember how much the discount code is. It's 15 to 20%, but something significant if you're interested there. If you want, feel free to email me, Josh at veryspecialgames.com. In general, I'm happy to talk with anybody at least a little bit and help you out if I can, make connections for you, and just general networking and discussion.
Absolutely. So again, go to veryspecialgames.com and we're going to put that the coupon code out in the comments of the show so you can go there and apply and get that discount and go from there.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Josh. This was a great conversation. I have probably another page of questions that we could go through, but hopefully we'll do it at another time and do a follow-up episode. Thank you for sharing knowledge and wisdom. Gang, you've been watching to and listening to the Executive Hub Show. Your host, Mustafa Hosseini, with my guest, Josh Roberts from Very Special Games. Hope you guys have a great day. Go check out their games at veryspecialgames.com, and we'll see you in our next episode.